Learn to live from the heart and not from the complexes of the mind and its made-up world that is the illusion. Only love is real. Learn to discern from what is of heart and what is of mind alone. Is that of the program running in, around its treadmill prison. Welcome. I'm so glad that you can join me here today. (308) pages 739 and 40 out of 850. This is an episode, audio-visual version of my book, The Sovereign Light, named after my ministry. My name is Reverend Maria Arvanitides. How do you do? This is a course in metaphysical spirituality. And with that said, let's get comfortable. Let's find some focus on our breathing. And no matter where we're at, just kind of congregate and center within the heart space and breathe out into the resonating field. And from the crown and the soles of your feet, just breathe in. And in a circular motion, breathe out. And then in, out. In, out. What is shame and guilt? So we already went into the first paragraph, and let's bring forth the activation affirmation for today. It's also found separately on its own, exclusively to complement this episode. Let's begin. Let's say these words out loud. I love my imagination, and from nature to anticipate cooperative acceptance for my synthetic contemplation is the process to the beauty of becoming deeply more with Creator and creation. And take a nice deep breath in. Take this in. I love my imagination, and from nature to anticipate cooperative acceptance for my synthetic contemplation is the process to the beauty of becoming deeply more with Creator and creation. And take another deep breath in. I love my imagination, and from nature to anticipate cooperative acceptance for my synthetic contemplation is the process to the beauty of becoming deeply more with Creator and creation. When the self can find the way to artificially create the boost it will require to manifest, and then have the manifestation willingly accept the attraction just the same from its creator as itself to love? Well, in this case, biological life forms, or split into synthetic hybrids or cyborgs even. This applies to you all, with the exception of objects, that we don't really have to care so much about the will of the forces that we split and then into many observations of opposites and variations and groups and divisions, and then we kind of resist each other instead of bringing it all back, because we're here to learn. And so one of these things is the will of all wills. Like, this is what we have, the freedom of free will, and we have this as a human right. And anything that's biological, that's not patented, has these rights of free will, unless they're coerced into giving their will up and empowering the illusion that's outside of them, that in fact they were supposed to learn from, not entrap and give away their soul to. That pinching off effect. In any event, true, the act of procreation can bring about the same. However, the programs were never designed to obsolete, and it could not be possible to sustain for eternities this way. Once the self can learn from one program, all it can get out of it must find the way to upgrade into another, and for that to send simultaneously more than one running with the mind of the self can create the conflict. Then that one of the mind that self can create the conflict with, yes. And so this conflict it becomes seen as a power struggle. So the time, the conflict, the friction and resistance that's created from that which we are struggling our powers with, like a tug of war, if you will, meaning that within the matrix that we accept to be a part of, that which we resist will persist, and vice versa. It's a tug of war. So this is what we get out of it in conflict. So the only relief would be, I guess, through the release. And what would the release be in the physical world would be, I suppose, death, transformation. So from the physical way of linear time to kind of leave one body for another, a form of recycling, like in the future, how we're going to do it is, okay, so this containment, now, we just leave it and we borrow another containment and someone else takes over this containment, and, so there's so many ways of opening our awareness and shifting our consciousness into another level of awareness. And so as we begin, the more open we are to receiving, the less resistance we will exhibit, obviously. So the time to rewrite the program over another obsoleted one can be a place of warlike and despair. Also, the anger from another oppressed might cause fear in another. And so it will be like a fight or flight, you know, and sometimes even like when you go and you're racing and a moose comes up and just charges at you and you wonder why, right? So the blockages are very obvious because they are the things that the self and truth requires, however, cannot seem to get there in the having of them. And moving on to the next page, 740. Just breathe that in. I love my imagination. And from nature to anticipate cooperative acceptance from my synthetic contemplation is the process to the beauty of becoming deeply more with Creator and creation. So, to sustain the self must overcome from all its sustenance to require in the process of nourish and nurture. Nourishment and nurturing. It must not feel ashamed and guilty of these needs. These things that it needs might find in the mirrors of its reflection within its circumstances and environment to be in fact the opposite that it must learn from in how to become that of its own to itself. And so then they just become preferences and more likely to be obtained without any real impact on expectations of the many details, you know? So it's more or less not defining it, just going general and just feeling it. And these things that cannot hold another life form as prisoner and hasn't the right to force against the will, so to depend on another for it if it doesn't obtain it. And so the reflection of such codependencies will mirror the worship of its workforce that it does enslave to meet its needs with. So we all end up in things, situations that we don't really want, but this is the way we can earn our way and contribute, is by doing things we don't want and being something we're not, just so that we can feel worthy and have the abundance given to us by giving in a little to something that doesn't even fit properly and makes us feel awkward and perhaps even traumatizes us. Like, you know, I can think of one thing in particular when we're split from our mother, and some of us aren't even breastfed, and you know they cut the cord, and the doctor and the male physicians and everybody comes in a white clinical setting instead of nice home births like I was a home birth. And so that really traumatizes us. Right from there we start to feel like we owe something. We need to earn back those things that are provided for us naturally. And it really disconnects us from the nurturing and the nourishment that we require to learn how to be able to provide it on our own. So this is the way we work through these things. So in this case, this can be the case for other species as well, and the entire earth of living beings. The self must appreciate the wildness of their nature to befriend in this way, and not to want to capture and enslave as silly little awkward forms of ownership to pet around with. And you find that with pedophilia, even, what they do to kids. This is exactly a very good example. And so, for this purpose of the many certain objects that the self can have its way with, do not feel the guilt and shame of such creations, and those from the reflections have designed these tools, and for this very reason, it can be safe to fully love the freedom from any force of will, nor holding back required. However, never go against another person's will in the sense of forcing and enforcing, and some may even call it rape or child molestations or things like that, you see? That's where I was getting at with that. Because of the level of disconnect that we are feeling. This isn't the way. And one feels fear and the other feels anger from it, or vice versa. So this is where we can refine ourselves into better versions, to shift our consciousness. And the purpose is to repeat all life, the purpose for today is to respect all life in the forms that they are given, to function with and freely from any form of bondage. You see, respect people's way and how they are. And don't try to change them and control them into something that they would feel uncomfortable just so that they could feel in a codependent relationship they're making money and earning a living. Same with, I believe truly some marriages are like this too, you know? And so it's really hard when you get into arranged marriages. And, you know, in the previous, down the lineage of generations, I'm sure women were forced into it. They were like sold like cattle, that they would have to marry someone they did not want, or marry into someone who has more money than them. And it just turned out to be abusive, wouldn't it? It wouldn't work out, would it? So just to make society happy in the way that makes everything dysfunctional. And it really doesn't work for anybody to be forcing themselves into something that doesn't make them happy. And so it's up to us to really value ourselves and not expect it from the outside. And I will leave you with today this affirmation. Thank you for joining me very much. And I love my imagination. And from nature to anticipate cooperative acceptance, from my synthetic contemplation is the process to the beauty of becoming deeply more with Creator and creation.